Well, it looks like everybody made it, even though we have had a little bit of rain. So thank you to everybody for coming and welcome. I'm Susan Garrett. I'm a former Illinois State Senator. I'm no longer in Springfield, but I am here as the board chair for the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform, or as we call ourselves, ICPR. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate Honorable Adlai Nancy Stevenson for their extensive work in Illinois through advocacy, public service, and the Stevenson Center on Democracy. We are also grateful to be joined this afternoon by Judge Mary Mikva as she presents the Stevensons with a Mikva Legacy Award for Truth and Justice. And then we are also going to have people from the audience come up and say a few words about the Stevensons. So on behalf of the ICPR board, Sarah Bruni, our executive director, and David Melton, our senior advisor, we welcome you. We always appreciate your interest in government and want to acknowledge our appreciation to those who continue to support ICPR's mission to increase transparency, accountability, and oversight of all levels of government. Our goal is to promote and motivate honesty and openness in government, and we always like to encourage compromise and collaboration to achieve positive solutions to public issues. One of our greatest assets is an online database, Illinois Sunshine, that continuously provides updates on all Illinois campaign expenditures and contributions, the who, what, where, and when of tracking political money in Illinois. The reason these numbers are important is because we believe that tracking and reporting outside numbers in dollars and sometimes anonymous contributions can shine a light on those that may try to have an impact on influencing public policies in Illinois. As you may have noticed, we have many elected and former elected officials here today, and I would like to acknowledge them in alphabetical order. They're all honorable, so let me start with Barbara Flynn Curry, John Cox, raise your hand, give us a wave, Judy Irwin, Lauren Beth is on her way, she's not here, Dan Hines, Nancy Rotary, Kathy Rigg, Carol Senti, Deborah Shore, Dick Simpson, and Mayor George Van Dusen. And of course, we want to recognize our very distinguished guest, Newton Minow, former chair of the Federal Communications Commission and recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. We also want to thank the staff of Pederinos who helped make this event possible. If we could please give our service a round of applause. And now to present Honorable Adlai Nancy Stevenson with the Mikva Legacy Award for Truth and Justice. Please welcome Justice of the Illinois Appellate Court for the 1st Judicial District, Honorable Mary Mikva.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is with great pleasure and a wonderful sense of creating continuity that as part of this day of celebrating the Stevensons, I present the 1st annual ICPR Mikva Legacy Award for Truth and Justice to the Honorable Adlai III and the lovely, charming, and indomitable Nancy Anderson Stevenson. The Mikva Stevenson ties, for those of you who don't know this, go back. They go back to the days when a very young Abner Mikva was the nobody that nobody sent and was a young and eager volunteer for the campaign of Adlai Stevenson II for governor. And I happened to run across this last weekend a visual that you probably can't see, most of you, but please come visit it. It says Adlai and Mikva, and then it has a bunch of signs for politicians of days gone by, including Art Berman running for state rep, Nina Shepard running for the University of Illinois trusteeship, and many others. And any of you who can come tell me when this is from and what it meant, please do so. But it was Adlai and Mikva at the top of the ticket. Now, there were, of course, differences between the Mikvas and the Stevensons. Adlai the third comes from 5 generations of participation in government, and Abner Mikva came from no such background. And both Abner and Adlai worked in federal and state government, and they both worked in the legislative and executive branches. But Abner went on for the trifecta, and Adlai went into business, created strong ties to Asia, started the Adlai Stevenson Center on Democracy, and whereas Nancy was, and still is, I believe, president of the Stevenson Center on Democracy, and she was chairman of the Illinois Humanities Council, Zoe Mikva, who became a teacher and was later a super volunteer, never had a title other than mom and member of the local school council. However, there is much in common. Besides the overlapping political careers, there's the obvious interconnection and overlap between the Mikva Challenge and the Adlai Stevenson Center on Democracy. And Nancy Stevenson and Zoe Mikva were both political partners in the fullest sense. They were confidants, a source of constant inspiration, and probably most importantly, this is speaking at least for my mother, but I guess it's for Nancy, they were a source of constant accountability. But what really ties it all together is a Stevenson-Mikva belief that government itself is not and never can be the problem. It has to be the solution. There's an understanding to the core of their beings, for Adlai and for Nancy, that making sure that this is so requires an incredible amount of work, a willingness to mix it up, to get dirty, to search hard for solutions to really hard problems. Our schools, our justice system, income disparity, our challenged democratic system. And for those of you, and you don't have to say who you are, but who have read Adlai's Black Book, he expressed some concern at that time that the values that created this country were being undermined by current politics. And that was the politics of 2007 and 2008. But notwithstanding that skepticism, I know, and I think we all know, that both Stevensons have faith, and it's a faith that my father died with, and the Stevensons live with, and ICPR is dedicated to instilling it in the leaders of tomorrow, that our system is stronger than our stumbles, that whatever challenges are put before us, truth and justice will win out in the end, even if the end is sometimes around a corner that we cannot see. And in recognition that this is so, I would ask the Honorable Adlai and the Mrs. Nancy Stevenson to please come up and accept the Abner J. Mikva Legacy Award for Truth and Justice.
When Mary was talking, and she was talking about the Honorable Adlai Stevenson, and then she paused, thought she was going to say, and the dishonorable Nancy. Thank you, Mary, you didn't do that. What a joyous occasion this is, and so heartwarming to see so many of these co-conspirators, warriors in this battle for better politics in this room. One of the joys and privileges of my life was the fun and inspiration of working with and campaigning for Abner Mikva. And that meant not only working with Abner, but developing a friendship with Zoe as well. And Mary's quite right. She is a power, and kept a very strong line to what was going on in politics. It was fun even doing door knocking with them. Susan Garrett, Sarah Bruni, and I thought it was Sarah Broom, but it's Sarah Bruni, beg your pardon. David Melton, all of the people with the ICPR. You do the hard, gritty work of research and creating the foundation for good politics and to improve Illinois' not always stellar reputation for politics. And the ICPR follows in the tradition of Paul Simon, John Clark Netsch, Cindy Canary. It's a very long history of good work. The Stevenson Center was founded on the premise that, it's the Madison premise really, that information is the necessary basis for good government. He said, his words were more eloquent than that. He said that a popular government without popular information, or the means of acquiring it, is but a prologue to farce or tragedy, or perhaps both. Mark Twain said it differently. He said, a lie can travel around the world while the truth is pulling on its shoes. I like to think that the Stevenson Center, modestly, may not travel around the world, but it is helping to pull on some shoes, we hope. That's our goal. The agenda for political reform, which the Center is also working for and with, all a collaboration with ICPR and all other good reform groups, works on the premise that the structure of politics has to be strengthened. And that includes all those things like campaign finance reform, gerrymandering, and Ad will talk more about that. But it's vital to have these structural issues in place so that the issues that touch everybody's heart, like poverty and civil rights and the environment and peace in the world, without the strong structural strength in our politics, we can't produce those other far vital issues for the world. So thank you to your warriors who are collaborators in this great enterprise. And to quote the novelist Hamid, hope is an active state. And that reminds us of the Mikva Challenge slogan, democracy is a verb. Hamid went on to say, to hope, you have to do stuff. You have to put your finger on the scale. You have to be there, and you have to believe and involve yourself in the possibility of change. That's the mission of the ICPR. That's the mission of the Stevenson Center. That's the mission that all of you, and there's so many people who shared with us some great campaigns, some winning, some losing, but all worthy, and shared with us this desperate concern to improve the politics. So thank you for this honor, and I give you the honorable.
Some losing? I still haven't conceded that election. Thank you, Judge Mikva. So you're a hard act to follow. Susan Garrett, Susan Bruni, thank you all. I don't know where that placard is that you mentioned, Abner and Adlai. That may go back to when we ran together for the legislature in 1962. That was the famous bedsheet ballot year when we ran. As Mary indicated, we go back a long way. He goes back to my father, but we ran and were elected, and that's where I first got to know Ab very well in the Illinois legislature. He was my leader then, and always thereafter, an inspiration. To receive the Mikva Award of the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform, and from the hands of Mary Mikva, is an honor for which I feel unworthy and am the more grateful. Judge Mikva carries on with distinction in the judiciary. The Illinois Campaign for Political Reform carries on with its wide-ranging efforts to reform the politics of Illinois and to better inform the people of Illinois. And the Adlai Stevenson Center on Democracy carries on with its agenda for political reform. This is a very wide-ranging, comprehensive effort to reform our politics by going to the root causes. It's a work in progress. It covers all branches, all levels of government in the nation. Everything from reform of gerrymandering and campaign finance to reform of the Electoral College, shorter primary election season, reform of the Federal Election Commission, 4-year terms for members of the House, reform of the Federal Communications Commission, selection of the state judges, et cetera. It's very comprehensive. It has more of a national focus, of course, than the ICPR, which is very focused on Illinois, but there's a great deal of overlap. And we hope to make the ICPR part of our coalition. And that's what we're doing now. We aim to bring good government organizations together in a coalition, all on the same page to support a platform for reform and reach those underlying causes of our discontent. You can find the agenda for political reform at the website of the Adlai Stevenson Center on Democracy. Your comments, your support are more than welcome. Governor McPherson would have approved. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Susan. Thank you all.
I forgot to say, and I'm so sorry, that there are a lot of the volunteers of the Stevenson Center here. They've come in from distant places, and would you mind standing? I'm so proud that you all are here. Without these people, we're an all-volunteer organization, so without them, there wouldn't be one.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Some very touching words about both families. Now we want to invite a few members of our audience, some distinguished guests, to share with us their memories of the Stevensons, their work that they've done with them over many years. We want to start out with Dan Hines. Do you want to come up and say a few words? And then I'll just call you up as we go.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be allowed to say a few words about the Stevensons. I was thinking about, and I've actually given a lot of thought to the parallels that my career and Adlai's career have had, and there's a lot of similarities between us. And before I do that, I need to immediately stop and acknowledge that by doing that, I realize that I am playing the role of Dan Quayle, trying to compare himself to JFK. So I'm on a much smaller scale than Adlai Stevenson, with so many parallels from having served in statewide constitutional office to running for the United States Senate and to losing a governor's race by just this much. It is, and coming from a family of political involvement as well. But really, the way I try to emulate the Stevensons now being out of office is just how remarkable it has been, the amount of change, progress, advocacy that they have engaged in since being out of office. From the Stevenson Center to Adlai's World Business Affairs, to helping individual candidates get into politics. It is really proof that you can really make a difference in this world, even without having that title before your name. And it's also a reminder, maybe a painful reminder, just how far we are in this country to those days where having a candidate and an office holder who is intellectual, principled, and yes, modest, how far we are. And I can say from the White House to the State House how true that is. And so, but it gives us hope and confidence that someday we'll get back there, especially if the Stevensons have anything to do with it, because we know their fight has just begun. So I want to thank ICPR for recognizing them. It's a great organization. And thank all of you for being here to honor them. Thank you.
If you're the tweeting type, you can tweet today's event at IL Campaign. We would just love it. Leader Curry, do you want to come join us?
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, ICPR, and thank you, Adlai and Nancy Stevenson. My father actually did some work for Ad's father when Ad's father was governor of the state. My father was a social worker, and he did some work on policy having to do with juvenile delinquency and other kinds of issues confronting the state of Illinois then, as they continue to confront the state of Illinois today. Everybody knows about Ad's very distinguished career. He started in the Illinois House of Representatives, I, for one, am happy to note, and he was a reformer when he was in Springfield. He went on to become the state treasurer, and then, of course, he went to the United States Senate, where he served well, more than 1.5 terms. But he left the Senate in 1981, and then, of course, ran for governor in 1982 with Dan Hines. I believe he was the winner, losing that race by less than 0.2%, and then not having a recount always struck me as being a very bad plan. In any case, the thing that I like especially about the Stevensons is the kind of wit and wisdom that they have always carried with them. My favorite quote from Ad's father is that if the Republicans will stop telling lies about the Democrats, we will stop telling the truth about them. And I noticed, so Ad left politics about 30 years ago, and I noticed this quote on his website. It says, "Once a man holds public office, he is absolutely no good for honest work." I want to point out to all the people who are here that for the last 30 years, Ad has been about honest work. He's done business with all kinds of people across the globe, in Asia, China, Japan. In fact, the Japanese gave him a particularly glorious award, but it's too long for me to read, and he's an honorary professor at Renmin University in Beijing. But within these last 30 years, with Nancy beside him, they've done wonderful civic work, and culminating, of course, in the development of the Adlai Stevenson Center on Democracy in that nationally landmarked house in the farm near Libertyville. So we all owe them a great debt of gratitude, and to ICPR for recognizing them today. Thank you very much.
She's funny. Love it. Next we have the Honorable Carol Senti for a special presentation for the Stevensons.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everyone here and be here for this special day. The Stevensons, the Stevenson is a name that's very familiar, and in my district up north, from Adlai Stevenson High School to the Stevenson Center for Democracy, and I've had the pleasure to work with the Mikva group as well as the Stevensons on legislation that allowed 17-year-olds to vote and to work with the students in increasing AP credit. So those were some of my pleasures. So we have a House of Representatives resolution for the Stevensons, and I'd like to read that. So. The members of the Illinois House of Representatives wish to recognize former Illinois State Senator Adlai III and Nancy Stevenson. And whereas Adlai Stevenson III is the chairman of the Adlai Stevenson Center on Democracy, which he co-founded in 2008 in honor of former Illinois Governor Adlai Stevenson II. Its mission is to address challenges to democratic systems of government and to conceive practical ways of addressing them. And whereas Adlai Stevenson III is the chairman of SC&M Investment Company, he served in the United States Marine Corps during the Korean War. He is a former Illinois Supreme Court Justice Clerk and a former partner in the law firm of Mayer Brown. He served in the Illinois House of Representatives from 1965 to 67, as Illinois State Treasurer from 1967 to 1970. In 1970, he was elected to the United States Senate and re-elected in 1974. He retired from the U.S. Senate in 1981 and was the Democratic candidate for governor of Illinois in 1982 and 1986. And whereas Adlai Stevenson III has spent much of his private life in East Asian public policy and business-related venues, he has traveled and worked in more than 80 countries and served on many boards and commissions. His honors include the Order of the Sacred Treasure with Gold and Silver Star from the government of Japan, an honorary professor at Renmin University in China. And whereas Adlai Stevenson III authored the Black Book about American politics and history as his family knew it over 5 generations, he is a graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Law School. And whereas Nancy Stevenson is president of the Adlai Stevenson Center on Democracy, she is a trustee emerita at the University of Chicago and the former chair of the Illinois Humanities Council and Federation of State Humanities Councils. She served as a CEO for Voices for Illinois Children and holds a Bachelor of Arts from Smith College, a Master of Arts from American University, and Master of Fine Arts from Vermont College, now the Vermont College of Fine Arts. And whereas in 2017, Adlai and Nancy Stevenson will receive the Mikva Legacy Award for Truth and Justice from the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform. They live on their farm in Northwest Illinois and have 4 children. Therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 100th General Assembly of the State of Illinois that we recognize former Illinois State Senator Adlai III and Nancy Stevenson and thank them for their community involvement and their work for the advancement of democratic ideals of government, and be it further resolved that a suitable copy of this resolution be presented to Adlai and Nancy Stevenson, adopted by the House of Representatives on March 22nd, 1917.
How's their Kodak moment? Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to have some more remarks and reflections. We can do it sort of wedding style. If you want to raise your hand, I can bring the mic to you. If you want to come up here, that's totally fine too. First, we're going to go through the list of people who we have confirmed ahead of time. We'll start with the Saltzmans.
We have a long speech. Okay. You're first.
Okay. All right. Beat up batters are fast, so here goes. My first paid job in politics. Now, I did a lot of stuff before I got paid. My first paid job in politics was fundraiser for Adlai's 1981 campaign for governor. Now, that's a big chance to let somebody like me be a paid, paid fundraiser. I was actually the one in charge, and we did a good job. Now it's
Okay. At that same time, Warwick Stevenson came in to live in our soggy and very wet basement for 1 year. It's quite an experience for all of us, I'm sure. And he then worked on his father's campaign during that time, so it wasn't just in the basement for the 24-hour period.
So we all know, and it's been mentioned before, that Adlai lost by 5,074 votes. In case you all mentioned that it was close, it was 5,074 votes. And was not allowed a recount. It was not that he chose not to have a recount. He was not allowed to have a recount by a Democratic member of the Supreme Court, which made a lot of us pretty unhappy. So now. But we moved on for a lot more politics.
And we then went on to better yet quiet dinners, mostly discussing the political world and the Near East. Congratulations on a dual honor, which I think is quite unusual, but well deserved and doesn't often happen. Many, many congratulations.
Willard Bunn.
Thank you. My name is Willard Bunn. My family and I have lived here 25 years, but like Adlai, I have a downstate heritage. In his case, Bloomington, in my case, Springfield. And growing up in Springfield in the 50s, I can truly not recall ever not knowing the Stevenson name. But I can vividly recall meeting Nancy in 1986 in one of the gubernatorial elections. We were stranded at Capitol Airport. We were making small talk, like, how do we get out of here? And I said to her, and I'm having the faintest idea who she was, what brings you to Springfield? And she said, politics. Well, that was an accurate answer, but maybe a little understated. Adlai is a double crimson. He has 2 Harvard degrees, but his father is a Princeton man, class of 1922. So I hope I can be forgiven for seeing this couple through the lens of Princeton's motto. And Princeton's motto is this: Princeton in the nation's service and in the service of humanity. What couple do you know that has fulfilled that model of the way they live more than this couple? Consider the record. Adlai served in the Senate for 11 years, the Senate being our highest elected body in the nation, and after that founded the Stevenson Center, a forum designed to discuss and debate issues vital to our nation. Nancy was with him every step of the way in the elected politics. At the same time, I had the joy of working with her at the Voices for Illinois Children, first as a board member, and then as the chief executive officer, standing up for our children, designing policies and programs for them the least of all of our segments of humanity, the one that is least able to speak for itself. So who does Nancy stand up for? Trying ceaselessly to give children a chance to be children. They did all of this without rancor, without bombast, just the calm assurance of doing their duties as they saw fit. And what we do today is to salute and thank them. And that's for giving every individual, whoever it is, a chance when he meets his destiny, his rendezvous with destiny, to make sure that rendezvous with destiny is a rendezvous with a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Judy Irwin.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I had the great good fortune of being born into a family that always worked on Democratic campaigns. So I remember early on the Stevenson name. I actually was born and grew up part of my life in Detroit. But shortly after moving to the Chicago area, my mom and dad were volunteers in every Stevenson campaign, so I didn't know every family didn't do this. It took me quite a while, actually, in college. I thought, what do you mean you're not working on a campaign? I said, everybody worked on a campaign. So I had the great good fortune to follow in my mom and dad's footsteps as volunteers in a number of ads campaigns, the 74 campaign for re-election, which actually wasn't too tough, but I learned a lot and worked in a Buffalo Grove office. I was a public school teacher back then with another good friend, Jackie Gallagher. That was when I first met Jackie, and we conquered many things together. What an honor, and fast forwarding to spending, I don't know, about 2 weeks recounting every ballot in Cook County 3 times when my old boss, Senator Rock, was the state chairman. I'm still convinced that you won, and to this day, only regret that we didn't have the good fortune to have his leadership. Nancy, your leadership in really launching Voices for Illinois Children lives on as a remarkable legacy, continues to do fabulous work on behalf of children, and it's just always been an honor to support you in all your efforts. Thank you so much for your service.
I'm Lauren Beth Gash, and as a Lake County resident, I am very proud that Lake County has the Adlai Stevenson home, and that it's been designated as a National Historic Landmark. Located within Captain Daniel Wright Woods Forest Preserve in Mattawa, it's one of the few in Lake County that's a National Historic Landmark designated by the Secretary of the Interior. Quote from the president at the time of the Lake County Forest Preserves: "To earn this distinction is a great honor for the Stevenson family, for the Lake County Preserves, and for all of Lake County, because Adlai Stevenson was such an important and influential figure in the political history of Illinois and of the United States." We hope the designation will increase interest in the place where Stevenson wrote speeches, hosted dignitaries, reflected on world events, and found solace in the landscape. We also expect that the status as a landmark will boost tourism, drawing many people from within Lake County and elsewhere in the state and country to visit and learn more about this American statesman. So if you haven't already visited, you absolutely have to. You really want to see this place. And you may want to come on a day when there's an event happening. There are incredible events. I am very honored to be a volunteer working with the Stevenson Center on Democracy, helping to plan events and publicity, etc. I really enjoy our planning meetings, working on topics that are critically important for our democracy, which I am hoping remains a democracy. I'm a little bit concerned about that, but very critically important that we work on continuing to keep it a democracy. I love working with Adlai and Nancy and all the things that they've done for Illinois and actually for the country and for Lake County in particular, but everywhere. Adlai Stevenson High School is in my former state representative district. When I was a state rep, I representative and spoke frequently there, and have been honored recently to speak about the Center on Democracy at Adlai Stevenson to the students. And the students have been very interested as well and involved as volunteers. On behalf of so many of us, people in this room and people outside of this room and people who don't even know about the Stevenson Center on Democracy and all of the good work that Adlai and Nancy have done on so many fronts, including that, but so many other things like Voices. Thank you so much on behalf of so many of us for making the world a better place and working so hard to do that. We're very grateful.
Joy is next. He is making his way to the front of the house.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today with our friends from ICPR to pay tribute to two Illinois giants. At a time when we see a bottoming out of public faith in our public institutions, at a time where our politics are increasingly polarized, it's important to take stock of and take heed of the example set by the Stevenson family. From their work at the Stevenson Center on Democracy to the Senator's leadership as the first chair of the Senate Ethics Committee, there is no mistaking the fact that to Nancy and Adlai, the word public always comes first in public service. Nancy mentioned structural reform and systems change, and I really admire and appreciate your work to re-rig the rules that govern politics, to give more power to ordinary people. But perhaps what I admire most about Adlai and Nancy is who they surround themselves with. They say, truly great friends are hard to find, difficult to keep, and impossible to forget. You both have established warm and robust bonds of friendship, as evidenced by everyone here today and this impressive lineup of speakers. Everyone who I've admired most in public life, whether it's Abner Mikva, Paul Simon, Don Clark Netsch, they all cherish their close friendship with you both. All of us who care about democracy and justice owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude for your leadership, your service, and the power of your example. On behalf of Change Illinois, please accept our deepest thanks, our heartiest congratulations, and our best wishes for your continued success. Thank you.
Sorry, David Melton. I got skipped one. Wasn't intentional.
I'll be brief. Democracy, as Adlai and Nancy reminded us, is a work in progress by definition. And it would be easy at some times, like the present, to have some doubts about our abilities to wisely govern ourselves. But as Nancy reminded us, it's important to have hope and take the long view, remember the progress we've made to get this far. It is reassuring to be able to be here today on behalf of ICPR to salute the continuing efforts of Adlai and Nancy Stevenson, their collective and continuing efforts, which have been discussed here before, through the Stevenson Center on Democracy, certainly provide us with renewed hope, which is critical. And it is an honor to be able to work with them in their efforts to make this a more perfect state, a more perfect country, and a more perfect world. Congratulations on a well-deserved reward.
Senior advisor, treasurer, sometimes our lawyer. I don't know. Board medic, no, it's you. Thank you so much.
I am honored today to be invited to speak a few words about the wonderful tribute to Adlai and Nancy. And let me start with Nancy. She may remember or not that I first met her in the mid-'80s when I was an intern, really a fellow in the Chicago Community Trust Minority Fellowship Program. When the then executive director, Bruce Newman, asked me to sit in on a meeting with Nancy Stevenson, I think Jerry Stanley, I'm not sure, Marvin Cohen, on a preliminary discussion about the advocacy of around women, around children's issues in Illinois, and which we later know became the Voices for Illinois Children. Although I was basically there just to listen and take notes and learn, I remember to this day how Nancy went out of her way to actually engage me in the conversation and the discussion and seemed interested in what I had to say, which for a minority fellow and that major foundation was kind of an oddity for me, but I really loved it and I remember it. I then went on let me back up. At the time, to be honest, I wasn't sure who Nancy Stevenson was. Maybe because I was working full time and going to law school evenings and just didn't get it, or I was a dunce, I don't know. But I knew she was related to former Governor Adlai Stevenson. I'm a native Chicago girl, and Senator Adlai Stevenson. And for me, again, native Chicagoan, that was enough. So I then went on later to know her prominence in the Stevenson family, and then I got to actually meet Adlai later when I moved into Lake County and attended some of the important sessions at the Stevenson Center for Democracy in Libertyville. Got to know him better when I discovered, once I became the executive director of the Field Foundation, that his dad had been the president of the National Field Foundation in New York, that had where Congressman John Lewis and former Ambassador Andrew Young had worked. And so we talked about those kinds of connections from the Field Foundation aspect of it. I just want to, again, be quick and say it's been a blessing and an intellectual opportunity for me to have been in the room with and company of Adlai and Nancy Stevenson, and I truly wish that it was an experiment that could be replicated for citizens throughout, not just the state of Illinois, right now throughout the country, but particularly for the young. I am challenged by the lack of hope in democracy that I talked to some others about it earlier. The lack of hope in our democracy that I am seeing reflected in again, among youth, but particularly in communities of color. And I just wish that they could be as blessed as I have been to know you and to get to understand your integrity and dedication to democracy. Bravo.
Thank you.
Nancy Rodering.
Oops, sorry.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Rodering. I'm the mayor of Highland Park. I'd first like to share a little story with you. When I was a little girl, we ate in a nook out of our kitchen, and the walls were covered with autographed pictures of my father's political heroes. And so we would spend our dinners watching the news and talking about they were all men, except for Golda Meir, who are these men, and what did they accomplish. Fast forward 35 years, and I had the opportunity to meet Senator Stevenson at a 10th M's event where he and Judge Mikva were scheduled to meet. I was excited and I was nervous to meet these legends, and I was honored when Senator Stevenson gave me a copy of the Black Book. So I took it home and I started reading. At the time I was running for Congress, did some research on his life and realized this was no stranger. I'd been eating dinner with this guy my entire life. Senators, you and Nancy have been role models and inspiration, as you've heard, to all of us. When I had the opportunity to speak with both of you about my position supporting the Iran deal during my congressional race, you shared your support and strong dedication to peace and diplomacy. You were incredulous that anyone would be opposed. Important words at any time, but in these moments in our history, ever so much more so. So thank you for your leadership, for your advocacy, for your dedication to justice and diplomacy, and for creating opportunities at the Stevenson Center for these important matters to be discussed and shared both now and with future leaders. Thank you so much.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me part of this important celebration today. And I always really enjoy these ICPR celebrations of the people who are truly the leaders in public policy and politics and public service. And the best part of these celebrations is that people share personal stories where you really get a sense of the people being honored. And those stories aren't going to be found in the printed interviews and biographies. So it's been really fun to hear what everyone is having to say. But I have to admit that it's also a little intimidating to be part of this roster of speakers. So I hope to share some of my experiences with the Stevensons. And these personal memories won't make the history books, but I really want to share the impact that they have had on me and obviously so many others. And it's really, I think, very encouraging to know that we have people to look to, like Adlai and Nancy Stevenson, as mentors and role models for so many of us. So my first memory of the senator in particular was cheering his selection of Grace Mary Stern as a running mate in 1982. And I attended one of the debates. At that time, you could go to an actual debate with my mom and my sister. And we left feeling so energized and positive that the Stevenson-Stern ticket would just sweep the state, because they presented the facts with such passion in such a well-articulated way that we just couldn't imagine that people would not respond. And I remember feeling like a light bulb going off, that what is abundantly clear to me and to others who participated in those opportunities to actually hear the candidates turned out not to be the will of the voters. And or, if it was the will of the voters, it was undermined by other decisions. So it was my reality check, and unfortunately, they keep occurring. As things become abundantly clear to me, they don't play out. So, which is why it is such an honor to serve with both of you on the advisory board for the Stevenson Center. And I have lots of friends and colleagues who are here too, who are participants in the work that really brings critical issues. But for the Stevenson Center, there would not be the opportunity to hear the people that you're able to bring because of your experience and your relationships and the fact that you listen to people and engage with what they want to know about. And those conversations are so critical in helping people understand the complexities of democracy. And what's really, really exciting about it, Ori, they're doing it. They're engaging the youth, reaching out to the youth, both from the city and the suburbs. Rarely are there opportunities for the kids to interact that way. And that opportunity to show the kids the value of the principles of democracy and to invite them to add their voices to the discussion are really, really critical roles to be played. And so it is an honor to be part of that group. But on a personal note, thank you for the wonderful desserts you provided. A little extra motivation. So, of course, I am also humbled by having followed Nancy's footsteps as the president of Voices for Illinois Children. And many of you have recognized her role in really being the force behind the foundation of Voices by convening the civic and academic and community and philanthropic leaders who recognized that it was important that the adults in the room speak for the children. And not only speak for them, but to really create that resource that policymakers have come to rely on. And it still happens today. After 30 years, legislators will still ask me, what does Voices think about this? You know, what is their research? What is their data? What are the Kids Count programs telling us about the needs of children and families in Illinois? And they also know that they can count on Voices, thanks to the leadership of Nancy and the team she assembled, to provide them the data that they need so that we can be assured that the investments that are made in early intervention and early childhood and economic stability for families and access to health care, including mental health care for kids, all of those issues are important to all of us. And but for the voices of people like Voices for Illinois Children, and thank you, Nancy, for starting that, that voice would not be heard, and it is so important for all of us that it is. So I want to add my thanks, and I know I speak for many who have had the opportunity to be involved in this work, to just my heartfelt thanks and congratulations on this most deserved honor.
Good afternoon, I'm Deborah Shore. I'm a member of the Board of Commissioners of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. It is abundantly clear that we are in a room full of greatness, and I'm so gratified to be here. When I think about exemplars of public service, I think about Adlai and Nancy Stevenson. All of us have been around long enough to witness some people who seek elected or appointed office because they want to be something. Others have sought office because they want to do something. And Nancy and Adlai, you have done stuff, and we thank you for that. I also want to say how much I appreciate the fact that Nancy knows and exercises the knowledge that laughter is a lubricant. And it's something that we all need and benefit from in these days. So I just want to add my voice to the many, the legions here and not here, who thank you for doing stuff.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to say a few words to Adlai and Nancy and everyone here about Adlai and Nancy on behalf of the League of Women Voters. I've been a member of the League for over 30 years, based on the advice and direction of my wife, who helped create the League in Joe Davis County back then. Bonnie now serves on the state board of the League of Women Voters, and she loves to describe the League as a model for principled citizen participation in our democracy. And over the years, we've had the opportunity to get to know Adlai and Nancy. And as the League approaches an issue, they identify an issue of concern, they study that issue from every side to determine what, if any, and certainly the best, if identifiable, solutions can be put together, and then act to implement those solutions. I cannot think, and I'm sure you agree, of another couple who personifies that approach to life and the important country that we reside in. In a day when truth is pushed aside by people who use words for the purpose of implementing whatever it is they want, whether or not there's any connection to reality, and where justice is lost, where people are focused on me first and what I can get first for me. For the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform to give you the award, Abner Mikva, especially with Abner Mikva, a wonderful person that I only had a chance to meet a couple times because of you. Award for truth and justice. It is a fantastic honor for me to have an opportunity to participate in this. We, the members of the League of Voters, and certainly Bonnie and I, appreciate everything that you have done, everything that you continue to do, and we urge you to keep doing it. Thank you.
You're doing good on time. I'm very proud of you all. Thank you so much. Dick Simpson is up next.
So I was going to give you my 50-minute lectures and we'll class today, that's what we're allowed, but instead I like the European and world tradition. Instead of giving a long speech and remembering the war stories, I would like to encourage all of you to join me in a toast to our honorees.
to Adlai and Nancy for your honesty, for your integrity, in being champions for our democracy.
Here. And Brian Castle. Thank you, Dick.
Thanks, Dick. That's a hard act to follow, but not near as hard as Adlai and Nancy's. Thanks to the ICPR and for the great honor that you guys have received. I'm Brian Castle. I'm the CEO of 4-Star Wealth Advisors in Chicago, and yes, the markets are going up. But I'm also the chair of the Illinois Channel, which is the C-SPAN of Illinois. And I joined the board about 4 years ago and went to a meeting at the Union League, and sitting next to me was this nice senior gentleman. I looked at him and, is that really Adlai? He's really still here with the board. The Illinois Channel had some difficult times. Everyone's had budget problems in the last number of years. So we're rebuilding the Illinois Channel. And I knew when I saw Adlai there with us, we'd be okay. Because we have a lot to build on. So thank you for your involvement with the Illinois Channel and all the things you've done for Illinois. Susan Garrett is on our board here. She's the lady in charge. And Dave Lundy is with us today, and he's also a board member of the Illinois Channel. So Adlai was there in the beginning with the Blue Ribbon Committee of Illinois governors and other folks at the Union League and other places like that, all hoping to broadcast the great story of Illinois. Looking backward, we're planning a bicentennial project to tell the great story of Illinois in this time when the state is in such dire straits financially and just rancor and political, angst. It's time to tell the great story of Illinois, kind of build our self-image again. It is a great state. We can solve these budget problems. And the Illinois Channel is there to help tell that story. There's a swamp, we need to drain it, fry it, dice it, slice it, whatever we have to do to fix it. But thank you again, and congratulations on your great honor, Adlai and Nancy, and thanks for your support of the Illinois Channel. And we volunteered the Illinois Channel to be one of the great voices of measurement and openness and disclosure, the full disclosure guys. So thanks for your support, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
There's some blue.
Dramatic entree. I just have to say, I feel like my life is being rerun before me when I see Dick Simpson, whose campaign I worked in, if my math is correct, 47 years ago. And his parsimony in words is quite striking. I wish I could replicate it, but I'm not going to even try. As the son of parents who knew well and loved both Adlai and his father, I grew up hearing Adlai III always referred to as young Adlai. Similarly, ever since Adlai introduced his 20-year-old bride Nancy from Louisville to his Illinois circle of friends in the mid-1950s, I grew up hearing her referred to, especially by my mother, Ruth Winter, as, quote, a real knockout. Now, in these serial tributes, it's hard not to be repetitive, and I'll do my best not to be, but it's not easy. We've heard from Kathleen and others about the work that Nancy has done with Voices of Illinois Children. For many decades, I did legal work representing troubled children in Cook County, and Voices of Illinois Children stood out as probably the most effective lobby for reforms in education, DCFS practices, and correctional policies. And it continues to this day, as you know, it's celebrating its 30th anniversary. As far as the center goes, it's the closest thing to a Greek Lyceum we have. And if you've ever journeyed out to St. Mary's Road at 2 p.m. on Sundays, you'll know what I mean. The speakers are always stimulating. The Q&A period is always stimulating. And Nancy and Adlai have somehow been able to select an array of subjects. It doesn't matter how complex they are, they will get an informative, lively speaker, and you will be wiser at the end of the day. To me, it's the embodiment of what Adlai II talked about as, all I want to do is talk sense to the American people. And that's what happens at the center. There's been talk by Mary Mikva and others about the sort of convergences between the Mikvas and the Stevensons. There's one aspect of the convergence when both of them were in the state legislature that I think deserves to be mentioned, and I'm surprised it hasn't been up to now. When both of them served in Springfield, along with people like Harold Katz and Tony Scariano, thank you, Paul Simon. They were known, Bob Mann, you know them. They were good government enthusiasts. And you know what they were called? The Kosher Nostra. Finally, for me, the most notable convergence between the two families is that between Abner and Zoe's remarkable 67-year partnership covering a wide range of civic activities, and Adlai and Nancy's similar partnership for 62 years that is still going strong. I know that if Zoe and Abner, if he were with us today, are joining us in saluting the ICPR for its superb choice in honoring young Adlai and Nancy, a real knockout for all seasons.
Last but certainly not at all least, David Morrison would like to share a few words. Okay.
My experience with the Stevensons came a bit later than many other people here. I started work with ICPR in 2000, and one of the first big projects that we worked on had to do with media reform and how broadcast news covers campaigns and elections. We had a number of partners on that project. The Stewart Family Foundation was very active, Northwestern University had some researchers, and the Stevenson Center, they were very engaged and involved. I got to work with Nancy and Adlai both on the project, and they were so generous with their time and their connections and helping to pull the thing together. And when the project came to a conclusion, we had an event actually right next door at the Siskel Center, and we had to put a program together to describe all the people who were involved. And my inclination was to say about the Stevensons that they're just great people, and just leave it at that. But apparently you can't do that in a program. You have to be a little more objective. So that was the point where I got their resumes just to read through kind of what they'd done. And I knew the elevator speech version of this, but was blown away by how broad and varied, how many different things they had done and succeeded in over the course of, well, up to that point. That was, what, 10 years ago. And what I came to see in doing that was that the way you build a record or a legacy of that kind of variety and richness and depth is precisely by being so generous with your time and so eager to engage with people and to make connections between people. There's absolutely a connection between your approach to things and the outcomes that you get. And that came, at least for me, to color of all the things I did with ICPR for my time after that, to be willing to work with people, to set clear goals, to have a sense of where you want to get, and not really worry about how you're going to get there, but to work together and make things happen. So I want to thank the Stevensons just for being the example that they have been, and helping at least me to see how to conduct things going forward. So thank you.
There we go. Thank you so much, David. Well, we are just out of time. I want to thank you all so much for being here. It's almost as someone scheduled this out perfectly. Hours and hours of work. Look at that. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to the Stevensons and Mary Mikva for being here. Feel free to stick around and socialize for a little bit. Thank you all so much.